What's up, guys? So I often get asked questions about how do you gear revivers in Arena, and of course there is many different specific niche pool builds for different champions in different situations, but in generally there is very little variation in the Platinum Arena reviver builds. Like, they are either gonna be in Stone Skin or in Bolster, and the third option is that they might be in Stone Skin and also have resistance. But getting enough resistance to resist Warlords and Yumekos in Platinum is very hard. The resistance is in disadvantage against accuracy, and it's generally almost impossible to do. I can't get enough resistance, and I will make a separate video about resistance, but it's an option. Some players use it, but most players can't do it, that option. Because if you're not able to resist the Warlords and Yumekos, you will lose so much stats like tankiness to get resistance, and it will not be worth it unless you can still pull off the revives after lockouts. But the general build is that you're either tanky in Bolster or Stone Skin. And the difference between those two sets is that Stone Skin, you won't of course take damage at the start of the fight for 2 turns, but you're susceptible to bombs. And Shield is the other way around, that you might take damage instantly from champions like Baron or Georgid that ignore shields, but you will add a lot of tankiness not just to the one champion but the entire team, and you could have multiple shield sets and so on. And it will be good against some other types of teams that don't do that, like Cupidus and so on. But generally you want to have a mix of both in your team. If you have either one only, then either bombs will farm you in 10 to 20 seconds, or Barons will one-shot your reviver and then you're done also, maybe in 20 seconds or a bit more. But you need to find some kind of balance or way in your team that you can a bit counter both of them, which ultimately you can't really, your defense is gonna lose most of the time anyway. But one common issue I see in the defense builds that people do on revivers, especially on those people that are pushing Platinum first time or planning to do it in future, is that they build their revivers kind of fast. I'm talking 200 to 250 speed, and they are using them in defense. Now there is situations where you will want your revivers to be fast, and it's generally in offense or in some very niche situations, like maybe you're using a lockout champion and so on. But in general, you want your revivers to be as tanky as possible and as slow as possible so that their reaction or shield or stone skin lasts as long as possible. And I can give you an example of my dodges, which is very standard build. Granted, my gear is decent, but this is the typical way you would build it. I have a little bit more speed on my dodges that I would want to, but that is because of reaction, and I get 20 speed out of the banner, and I have no other banners that I can use, so I must use this one. And reaction is very important on revivers, so you pretty much always want to use reaction, even if you have much better other pieces to use. But the general threshold is something you're aiming for 0 speed with, let's say, 4k defense and 130k HP. And the reasoning behind going much more for HP than defense is that, first of all, defense has the mitigation in it has a soft cap, and you will gain a lot less from the same amount of stats for defense mitigation after let's say 4200 points. But in Arena it's even different than in PvE, because in PvE people will say that 4200 is the soft cap for clan boss and PvE content. But in Arena there is a lot of ignore defense mechanics, and some of the champions will even ignore your defense fully with their skills, and sets and masteries and so on. But at that situation, or if they have a decreased defense debuff on you, which is a lot less used in this meta, but in those kind of situations, defense loses a lot of its value, and at that point you mainly just want to focus on HP. But it's still good to have some defense, because in some situations, let's say they don't proc Helm Smasher, or they're using Cupidus offense or that kind of stuff, defense can still be very good. And it shouldn't be ignored, but you shouldn't go for defense main stat. Like, you always want to go for HP main stat bottom pieces on revivers. But yeah, this is the kind of general like threshold. Like, I will say that the issue with my build is that the dodges is actually too fast. And in my specific situation, like, I only have one dodges, and I'm using the same one both in offense and defense. And ideally I would have two dodges, and the other one would be in fast stone skin for offense, and the other one would be either in bolster or stone skin and like base speed for defense. But hopefully at some point I will get a better banner from faction wars, I mean clan wars, and then I can maybe lose some of its speed. But here is also a chart about, where is it? Yeah. I mean, again, this is nothing like, many people will know this will not come as shock to you, but just basic guidelines, that the main sets are like stone skin and bolster, and swift parry used to be the main set on revivers, and it's still possible. Like, you might have a lot of swift parry and not of the other sets. Like, maybe you recently came back to the game, or for some other reason you haven't been able to do Hydra and you don't have a lot of stone skin. I would either consider swift parry or bolster. And the issue with shield set, or it's not issue, like, shield set is basically almost as good as bolster, or depending on situation, because if you have both of them together, they stack, and the shield set is also unremovable. So you might have a lot of good shield sets on your account, maybe with like HP or defense ascension. And maybe if you run a team with multiple champions in shield set, I mean like bolster / shield set, maybe you have one champion in your best bolster set, and you have another champion in your best shield set, which is much better than your second best bolster set. I'm using my Necret in shield set as well, actually, I can show it to you. But as far as the 2-piece sets go, it's kind of similar thing. Like, mostly you will see Immortal, which people will have from Clan Boss, which, you know, just gives regeneration and HP, which is very essential for healer. But also there is other 2-piece options, and of course if you don't have good pieces on these 2-piece sets, you could use like HP or whatever 2-piece sets you have, or even broken pieces. And of course there is like different niche builds for different revivers. Like, on some revivers like Ukko, maybe you want more speed and accuracy, or maybe you haven't used like stun sets. But in general, when you build tanky revivers, these are the guidelines that you will use. And this will apply even on, like, you can do the same kind of builds even on less popular champions, like let's say Rector and other, like, let's say B tier revivers. If I quickly just show that this is my Necret build, actually maybe I should show it here on the Hell Hades website, because it will just show it better. Yeah, I have 2 Necrets, but I haven't been using the other one for a while. Like, I use it occasionally, but I use the other one if I use stone skin set in defense. But for now I've been using shield set for several weeks in defense as well, and I've just been using the one build. But yeah, this build is actually just using shield set, and that's because I'm pairing it with a Duchess that has a bolster, and as you can see I have some decent pieces on shield set, so it makes it worth to use it. But if I quickly show you, I think, do I still have Rector in the build? yeah, so even these kind of builds, like this is maybe a bit faster than you want to build. And of course, if you do a swift parry build, you could consider making those faster. Like maybe you don't have any reaction and you have like, I don't know, 350 plus speed Sifi in swift parry. These kind of builds are totally possible. And there is all kinds of like needs, variations of the builds that I'm talking about. But in general, these are what you should aim for. Like they are the most like tried and true builds. Like they are not the only builds, but they are the very like core basic working builds. But on this Rector, for instance, it is in the similar vein. Like it's a bit faster. This is not maybe in my best pieces because I don't use her anymore. And swift parry does give you a decent amount of speed, but it's basically very tanky with not super high speed. Like this is a bit higher speed than I would generally advise if you're using reaction. But on swift parry, this is also an option as well. And of course, Rector doesn't have very high base HP, so this is very high HP, and even if you get her in like, I don't know, 70k HP, even that might still be decent if it's in swift parry and so on. But I understand that this is not your standard build. As far as the masteries go, I think I will probably make a separate video about this as well, because I don't want to make like many like 30 to 40 minute videos and then people will not like listen to them completely. But if we just quickly go through the typical masteries that are important on revivers, like of course you will always use defense and support trees. Maybe there will come an exception in the future, but for now there is no reviver that you will use offense tree on. But the core tier 6 masteries that you will use on revivers, generally this one is used on offense, not in really defense, but for offense this one is used. And back in the day, before Stoneskin, people also used their swift parry revivers in this one because it gives you turn meter when teammates take damage or go low HP, and then he can get the revive up and so on. But generally this is not used a lot in defense anymore, but it is an option of course. Now this one that only gives you flat HP, it's totally viable. Like I see many people like underestimating this one and not even considering this option, but it gives you a decent amount of HP and it's totally viable. Like if the other ones don't give you anything that you need for your specific build, you should pick this one. But of course Unshakable is only in resistance builds, and if you use them you will always use it. And then the last option for revivers is Fearsome Presence, which you generally will use nowadays with cheap. Basically the two main options is either this one or Elixir of Life, and I would use this one if you use sheep, and Elixir of Life if you use something else like what's it called? Bone Armor, or that's not the actual name. Dude, it's so confusing because I always keep referring it to as Bone Armor because of the effect that it has, but it's called Ward of the Fallen. But yeah, if you use this one, you might use the Elixir of Life. Here is another example of a reviver that I have built slightly differently than the standard build. And for this specific reason, as you can see, I'm not even using any reaction at all on my Python. And the reason is that he is so fast that there is no reason to even use any reaction. Like he's like 220 speed, which is far above what even the fastest nukers will be, except maybe Rotoses, but anything else will be way slower. Like many Barons and Georgids will even be like 100 speed. But the reason why I built this specific reviver much faster than I'm recommending you, and this is just like example that of course there is variations to these standard builds, but the standard builds are like generally the best ones. But for him, he has a one that does a good amount of healing, and like I said before, I'm not able to build any of my revivers in Resistance, because I don't have Faction Guardians or Empowered Revivers, and it's basically impossible for me to get even close to enough Resistance in Platinum Arena. So my revivers will always be locked out, and I don't have a lockout champion myself anyway, so I can't even threaten the enemy team with my own lockout. So they will always be locked out, and he will heal decently even with his A1. And my Rotos will benefit a lot from this, which I'm always using in defense. And he is in 6-piece stone skin, so even if he like takes a turn before the enemy, he's around the speed that he shouldn't take 2 turns before the enemy. Now it's possible if they have like 100 speed nukers, but generally this will take 1 turn before the enemy nuker, and then it will take a 2nd turn after they go. And that's why I'm opting to use counter-attack accessories instead of reaction, because reaction would be pointless in this champion. But other than the speed, this looks fairly standard reviver build. Like, again, I'm going for very high HP and moderately high defense. And the masteries also are very basic ones, like kind of what I mentioned from before as well. And then another example of another niche different build that I have. And of course I don't have every single reviver in the game, like I don't have Siphi for instance. But here is kind of the same deal as I had with Python, that this is kind of like niche build, not the standard build. Well, on Ukko actually this is the standard build, but you could build Ukko as like a slow stone skin reviver as well, and he would be very annoying with his passive. But the reasoning behind this build is that I went even faster than on the Python, and he's not very tanky at all actually. And he has like a moderately high accuracy, but not like super high. But the reasoning behind this niche build, which is the standard build on Ukko, is that his only skills, like he has the one revive skill that doesn't do any damage, but both of his damage skills are AoE hits. Like the other one removes buffs and puts block buffs on enemy, which you can basically remove their immunity and then stun them on the same skill. And then the other one places decrease attack. And both of them are AoE hits, and it can add a lot of RNG to the fight and make it like not guaranteed that enemy will win the fight, because if Ukko goes first, or even if he doesn't go first, but if the enemy doesn't have immunity, there's always a chance that he will stun them and possibly like win you the fight. And as you can see with him, I kind of have the same deal, that I have plenty of reaction for him actually, as you can see. And I'm not even considering using any of these reaction accessories. And I'm also using revenge on him to get as many like A1 procs and try to stun the enemy. And for the banner I'm just using the fastest banner that I happen to have for Skinwalkers. But yeah, this is the kind of niche situations you might encounter with your revivers. And this is some like food for thought that how you can do it. Like, it always depends on your champions, and not just your champions, but what gear do you have. Like, maybe you don't have good stone skin gear, maybe for that reason you don't even consider using stone skin and you only use bolster, or you can't use either one of them and you have to use swift parry. It depends, but generally these builds are the optimal ones, but there's always like exceptions for these. But that's it for this video. I hope this is helpful for you, and if you have any other questions about this topic, I will answer it in comments. And I will make a separate video about all of the sets for Arena, and another one about Resistance, which is its entire own topic by itself. And I will probably also make separate guides about these Reviver champions in the future, so I didn't want to go like too detailed in everything. But I'm planning to do a lot of more of these guides, so hopefully all of your questions will be answered. But that's it for this video, and thanks a lot for watching.